Okay, video number 2. I told you on the last video that I was going to do a very serious video, and this is what this is. Most of you will probably know how big YouTubers have been doing Draw My Life using a whiteboard and markers. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to talk to you about my life, because I don't have a whiteboard, I don't have markers, and I can't draw to save my life. So, here goes. I was born into this world in the wonderful year of 1996. I was the child of 2 parents, a man and a woman, ironically. I had an erratic growing up period where when I was very, very young, my parents split up. And when I got to about 2 years old, my mother did something very stupid and went to prison. I lived with my dad during that time for a year until I was involved in an accident because he was drunk, and I then was taken away and moved to my auntie and uncle's house. When that happened, my mum was obviously distraught, but she couldn't get out of prison. She came to visit me once, but there was not much else she could do. And the time when she came to visit me, I was actually in a coma, so... Then, a year later, my mother came out of prison when I was 4. I remember we had an epic movie night, and, you know, it was pretty cool. And then shortly after, I moved back in with my mum. Then, after a few years, things started to go a bit downhill. My mum was a on and off alcoholic. She basically made some friends who got her back into being an alcoholic, and she went very, very downhill from there. I was classed as a young carer for a couple of years because of her alcoholism. Then she met her current girlfriend, and because my mum is actually a lesbian, she met a current girlfriend and they rushed into things, and we moved in with her. Unfortunately, that didn't go very well, and because they had such a turbulent relationship, me and my mum got kicked out several times, and we moved into a homeless hostel, because we had nowhere else to go. My mum, because of her alcohol issues, then proceeded to not pay the rent at this homeless hostel, and therefore had to give up the place we had. She went to move back in with her now girlfriend. I decided that I'd had enough. I was 16, and I moved out. I moved into some supported accommodation in the next town over while I was in college, and I made some epic friends, but at the same time I had a bit of an identity crisis as to who I was, what I was doing. You know, I didn't have to answer to anyone anymore, and it became a very awkward time for me in terms of finding out who I was, separate from my mum. Because when I was with my mum, I was always, you know, I suppose I was the one who was taking care of her, kind of thing, and it was like she was my responsibility, and I had school and things as well, so there was always something. Whereas at that point in time, college was optional, you know. Well, it wasn't optional, but I didn't get into trouble if I didn't go, basically. You know, I wasn't living with my mum, so I didn't have to take care of anyone, and I kind of had a whole, oh, what do I do now thing, and it didn't go particularly well, but at the same time, I could have done a lot worse. I kind of stopped going to college for a while, became quite lazy, you know, I kind of dropped too much at once, and it became very awkward for me, because the thing was, I stopped going to college for a while, and then by the time I thought about going back, it was like, well, I don't want to get in trouble for not going, so I stayed off even longer because I was putting off getting in trouble for not going, and it wasn't very good. I was speaking to a counsellor for that entire 2 years who actually worked at the college, and she was very helpful. She kind of helped, she helped me realise that I wasn't in fact insane. The amount of times I thought there was something completely wrong with me, and it just wasn't the case. And she helped me realise that I am, in fact, more normal than I thought I was, which was good. Then I met James, and we became an item, and we spent quite a while together. He lived down here and I lived about 360 miles north, so we couldn't really spend too much time together, but we did Skype a lot and had a lot of conversations over text and phone call and things. And after a while, when it became legal, and when I was 18, so I didn't have to get parental permission because I knew that was hopeless, we got married. And we have been married ever since. I've moved in now with him and his mum and his brother. We have a pretty good relationship. We work pretty well. And that's basically my life so far. I know I haven't gone into a lot of details, but that's basically, I'm 18, there's not much to tell so far. I am currently in the process of finding a job, which is going awkwardly. It's finding where to apply, I think, is the biggest issue, because most places either want experience or me to have my own car or something like that, and I have none of those things. I'm currently working in a charity shop. As I mentioned in my last video, I'm volunteering for the Oxfam bookshop, and it's great working in a bookshop. Literally, I've basically been there for 2 shifts. I was there for a couple of hours on Tuesday, and I was there for 4 hours yesterday. It's Thursday today, yesterday was Wednesday. And I've already been taught how to use the till. Compared to when I worked in the British Heart Foundation when I was up north, and that was a charity shop as well, and I was volunteering there, I was there for about 4 months and no one ever taught me to use the till. So, yeah, that's always interesting. Also, in the bookshop that I work in now, if they're going to throw out any books and I like them, I can just take them. And they throw out a lot of books. If they're slightly old or, they have too many copies, they'll throw them out. And I got 2 books yesterday. One which is a biography of, I think it's an autobiography actually, of the first 20 years of Stephen Fry's life, which should be very interesting. And I also got a book based on QI, which is also interesting. I'll be reading them once I've finished Alpha Byte. So yeah, they'll be added to my TBR list. I might have to make a list on what I need to read and put them in an order, I think. But yeah, there is a very interesting, series to my life. Excuse me. Yeah, there's a very interesting series to my life. I've had a lot of issues. I still have some kind of, I don't want to say mental issues because of the stigma attached to it, but that's basically what they are. I still have some anxiety, and social anxiety in particular. I don't get depressed anywhere near as much as I used to when I was living with my mum, but I still, if I'm upset, I still turn to Coca-Cola, because that is, one thing that I will probably always do. Either that or cheesecake. And I shy away from conflict now. Because of how much there was between me and my mum, there was a lot of arguing and shouting, and I never liked it. Now, if there's any sort of argument going on in the house, I will either walk out the door and avoid it completely, or I will sit there, half the time literally shaking, because there's a thing that goes off in my head, and it can be like, the thing with arguments is, they can be completely fine. I mean, obviously raised voices and things, but at the same time, nothing to be overly scared about. But I also shake like a leaf, because of my history. And, I don't drink because my dad died of alcohol poisoning when I was 10. My mum is drowning her life away. And it's just, I looked at my parents as basically what not to do. Alcoholics. My mum smoked. She really wasn't a good parent. If anything, she was a teenager in a 40-odd-year-old's body. It was like I was the adult and she was the child half the time. It just wasn't good. Yeah. But it's a lot better now. I have had a very troubled history, turbulent, childhood and adolescence, but now things are improving a lot. I'm 19 this year, and, I'm beginning to think things are turning around, and it helps to have good friends and, decent people around you. That helped when I was, living with my mum and I was suffering from depression. I had suicidal thoughts and everything, and it was my friends who would, stop me, whether they knew it or not. Sometimes it was that they had to speak to me and, convince me, and talk me out of it. And other times it was just, I had to think about, them and what they would feel if I were to go through with it and things like that. And it stopped me, and it, technically a lot of my friends have saved my life at least once. And it's interesting, that, the effect people can have on your life. Some people can have very positive effects and other people can have very, very negative. And it's not the people you expect either. You wouldn't expect your mum to be the person who was basically ruined, your childhood, your adolescence. But with me, that was the case. The worst thing was when I was younger. My mum attempted suicide 3 times, and it led to me being scared to leave the house. It led to me never wanting to stay out overnight. I became, paranoid that she was going to, at some point, succeed in ending her life, and it panicked me. It really did. She ended up hospitalised for a while, and I was at my auntie's because she had attempted suicide, and I was told she'd had an allergic reaction to some alcohol she'd had the night before, and it wasn't the case at all. At one point I caught her with her head in a gas oven, and that again was just, it was scary. I did care for my mum, I really did, but at the same time I kind of got sick of her. I grew to resent her quite a lot because of the strain she was putting on me, on my life, and how I didn't need that as a teenager. So yeah, now if anyone mentions my mum or anything that's happened to her, I can't care less about what she's doing now, because she's not a part of my life anymore. She's ruined her life, she's ruined my life. The beginning of my life. And now I took it into my own hands, it's gotten a lot better. And yeah, that's enough for me to warrant turning around and just being like, you know what, I don't care anymore. I can't be dealing with it. I heard that she's on about marrying her girlfriend this year, and, my half-sister has had an invite, and I haven't, ironically. Not that I care, but I wouldn't go anyway, even if I did. But, she's spoken to people who I used to stay with when I lived back up north, and said and told them this, and I'm just like, to be honest, I don't care. I'm not going, if she thinks I'm going to be bothered, then she's got, I think she likes to think that she's getting to me, but she's not. I mean, yeah, now that my life has turned around, I am much happier, much healthier. I'm more independent, but at the same time, I have people who care about me a lot more. I have, I have supporting people rather than my mum, who used to put me down a lot, and you know, and I think it was more because she was jealous of the fact that I was doing something with my life and she had never done anything with hers, and she used to put me down a lot, and that's where a lot of my social anxiety comes from, the fact that I'm scared that people won't like me. I'm worried that, I will be, viewed negatively, and that, people just won't, well, they won't like me, and, I do worry that I'm, not a decent enough person, or that I do things that annoy people, or that, and, I think a lot of people do feel like that at times, but I actively stop speaking to people because I'm scared that I'm annoying them, and even if they've just had a bad day and they've said something, or even if, like, there isn't any inkling of that, but if I'm starting the conversation all the time on Facebook, I'll stop eventually, because I'm worried that I'm talking to them too much, or that they don't want me to talk to them because they haven't started a conversation, or something along those lines. And, it does worry me that this happens. More than it should. It gets to me more than it should. And, I have some trust issues as well that also stem from my mum, because she used to steal from me, essentially, and things. So, yeah, it wasn't a very good mother-son dynamic, and no matter what twist you put on it, it never will be, but at the same time, I stayed with her for a while because she's my mum, and, I thought that's what I had to do. I thought that was, I thought that if I turned around and said, no, I don't want to do this anymore, people would think I was a terrible son or something. But when I got to 16, I just had enough, and I knew that if I kept with it, then I was just going to snap, and, I'd be the one in a mental institute. So yeah, I've changed my life, and, it did get better. It got a lot better when I did that, and I rambled on for 17 minutes now, and I'm going to stop now. So I shall see you shortly.